You're listening to an Ono Media podcast.
Good morning, and thanks for joining me for Rise in Crime, your morning caffeine hit all about crime. Let's start out today with a case suggestion out of Moline, Illinois, a case that has haunted longtime locals for nearly 30 years and may have some answers as of last week. First off, Moline, Illinois. On August 21st of 1996, Moline was pretty much the same size that it is today. Roughly about 43,000 people live in that city. But the greater area of the Quad Cities is where the region gets its size. The industrial city is located on the border of Illinois and Iowa, and the four cities intersect at the confluence of the Rock River and the Mississippi River, which is why we have four cities bordering each other. Moline and Rock Island in Illinois, and we have the other two, Davenport and Burtendorf in Iowa. Now, when you add up the population of the Quad Cities, you reach a much higher density of 380,000 people. And just like other Middle American cities, Moline has a mainstay, and that's the farming equipment industry. John Deere is the big one here, but Case, Caterpillar, and International Harvester have all had operations in the area. So what happened on August 21st of 1996? That was the day that 11-year-old Trudy Appleby was last seen in the driveway of her East Moline home. This was at about 9:30 in the morning. She is yet to be found. And like I said, if you're a longtime resident of the area, you know Trudy Appleby's story. The day before she disappeared, family friend Kelly Dunlap remembers that Trudy was being an 11-year-old. Playing outside on a summer evening. Trudy had come over to Kelly's house to play with her daughter, and the two ate hot dogs, mac and cheese, and they rollerbladed out front of Kelly's house. Kelly said Trudy excitedly mentioned the start of the school year, which was just around the corner. Well, the next day, Dennis, that's Trudy's father, he said Trudy had asked if she could go swimming on Campbell's Island, this with a friend that she apparently knew. This next part is such an 80s and 90s thing. It's all pre-cell phone. So Trudy had contacted her father on a CB radio to ask if she could go with this friend. Now, if you don't know what a CB radio is, it's a communication device that truckers use to share info. Like, you have to be close to each other. You use radio waves and a handheld speaking unit. And like I said, distance matters. It can't be long distance. So Dennis must have worked as a local delivery driver with a CB in his truck, and there must have been a CB in the home, and this was the way that Trudy called her dad. Now, when Trudy reached out to her dad on the CB radio, and she asked about swimming, Dennis told her, "No, you can't go because I need you to get ready for the trip." Now, I'm reading context clues here, but it seems Trudy was headed out on an overnighter, and she needed to pack. It might have been with her mother. Well, later that day, around lunchtime, Dennis took his break from work and he grabbed lunch for him and Trudy. When he stopped in at home, Trudy wasn't there. So he finished his food, he left her a note and the lunch on the table, and he went back to work. Later that evening, Dennis returned from work again, and everything in the house was exactly the same. Food and note on the table, Trudy nowhere to be found. As Dennis recalled the early evening, he said he thought it was strange, but he also concluded that Trudy could have left to go camping with her mother earlier than she was supposed to. Now, as the evening proceeded, Dennis couldn't shake his weird feeling about not touching base with Trudy. So at around 7 p.m., he said he called the police station. That's when father and law enforcement started asking questions. The last known sighting of Trudy was in the mid-morning hours. A neighbor had seen Trudy standing by a silver 4-door box-type car. In the car was a man described as being in his 20s with dark brown curly hair and a baseball cap. Trudy got in the car and headed down the street. That was it. That's the last time Trudy has been seen. For years, vigils have been held. Local newspapers revisited the disappearance on the anniversary. Law enforcement never closed the case, and they just kept diligently working towards discovery of more evidence and potential persons of interest. Near the 21st anniversary of Trudy's disappearance, so that would have been in 2017, police named a suspect in that disappearance. Detectives were saying that they believe the last man to have contact, to their knowledge, with Trudy was William Ed Smith. We've got a problem, though. Ed is dead. He died 3 years earlier. Now, at the time in 2017, investigators were confident that Ed was the dark-haired curly guy that was driving the four-door Chevy with Trudy inside. Another witness says they saw Trudy in the passenger seat and that Ed had been seen grabbing some life jackets, placing them in the car, and then driving away toward Campbell's Island. Police had an additional detail now, though. They said Ed was seen again in the late afternoon hours, but Trudy was not with him. Witnesses close to Ed were also on the record saying that in the weeks following Trudy's disappearance, there was a shift in Ed's behavior, that he would become despondent when her name was mentioned, because back then everyone was talking about the missing 11-year-old girl, so it happened often. Now, this close friend of Ed's said that Ed had threatened to kill him if he mentioned Ed and Trudy having anything to do with each other. Now, there was another curious detail. That boxy Chevy that Ed was supposedly seen driving, well, Ed got rid of that car just days after Trudy was reported missing. And when I say he got rid of it, the source material indicates that the car was scrapped and sold for pieces. So what's the connection between Trudy and Ed? Well, Ed knew Trudy's dad, Dennis. And in an interview back in 2017 with WQAD, Dennis acknowledged that he had told police 2 days after Trudy was reported missing that Ed and his friends were involved in Trudy's disappearance. Dennis said the following in 2017. "These are the people I named as the ones who I felt were responsible. I think the only thing that kept this thing going for so long is we don't have Trudy's body. It's hard to prove anything without a body." Now, Dennis said he felt like Ed and his friends lured Trudy with the promise she could go swimming. And when Dennis told her no, that the men were very convincing and talked her into going with them anyway. He said in the interview that he felt like they went on the boat, and when Ed tried some funny business, that Trudy might have fought back, and that is when a potential accident happened and Trudy was harmed. Now, the funny business, I want you to know, that's not me being like light with this situation. That's the word Ed used. So I'm trying to phrase it the way Ed was telling the TV station that he felt. Now, Dennis even identified in that interview where he felt like they might find Trudy's body. Dennis said Ed and his friends hung out on the east side of Campbell's Island and that Trudy could be there somewhere. So in this story, I've been vague here purposely. I've been saying things like Ed's friends or a witness. Well, in this interview, Dennis wasn't vague. He told the TV station reporter that the witness who Ed would cry to and who Ed threatened that he would kill was none other than Ed's own son-in-law, David Whipple. Boldly in that interview, Dennis implored David by name to tell him what happened to Trudy. He said that he 100% knew that David had information he was withholding. And remember, his father-in-law, Ed, is dead, so why can't David share that information now? The threat isn't in existence. Well, back in 2017, the new investigator on the case that named Ed as a suspect answered the question you might have been asking about this timeline. Why did it take 21 years to name Ed? Heck, why did it take an additional 3 years after he died to name Ed? Well, Detective Griffin said in 2017 that sometimes detectives hold too much information close to the vest, believing they need that unplayed card to solve their case. Detective Griffin had a different take on the investigation 21 years later. He said it was now an investigation about a cover-up and not so much an investigation to find out who did it. Well, if that's not some foreshadowing for the arrest that happened last week, I don't know what is. Because on Thursday, a Henry County, Illinois grand jury indicted 50-year-old Jameson Albert Fisher with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of concealment in a homicide. Now, if you're doing the math, Jameson would have been in his early 20s when Trudy disappeared, and as investigators are feeling, when she was murdered. This wasn't the first mention of Jameson in this case. He and David Whipple were longtime family friends. And back in 2020, police had named both David and Jameson as persons of interest. Okay, so we had the first initial naming in 2017. This one all started in 2019. This is when the search for evidence was reignited when police searched a boat that they believed was used 24 years prior in the abduction of Trudy. Whatever they found on that boat, they then used as leverage to name the two as suspects. That happened in 2020. And then they potentially used some of that evidence and presented it to the grand jury to get the indictment of Jameson last week. Now, maybe they didn't really find evidence on that boat. We don't know yet, but they clearly have some sort of evidence to arrest Jameson and charge him with murder. Now, it's important to note that they could not charge him with kidnapping because the statute of limitations has run out on that charge. Police are saying that they believe Trudy was sexually assaulted. She was killed by strangulation and then dumped somewhere that they have yet to uncover. And only Jameson can be charged since David died in 2022. Now, David was a registered sex offender at the time of his death, so he had been crossing paths with the law, obviously, in other times besides Trudy's murder. That sexual predator offense happened in 2002 when David assaulted another 11-year-old girl. Remember, Trudy was also 11. He pled guilty to sexual assault of a family member in that case. So we've got David. That was his past. He is now dead. What about Jameson? Well, he had crossed paths with the law also. When he was arrested for the murder of Trudy, he was on parole following a prison stint in Iowa. See, 6 different women have filed orders of protection against Jameson from 1997 to 2018. He was convicted of felony obstruction and destroying of evidence back in 1996. And in 2018, he stole a pickup truck with a trailer that was valued at $10,000. To be honest, he was kind of a habitual offender. He has burglary charges from 1993, 1998, and 2019. He also seems to like to damage property. He has charges for that offense in 2003 and 2016. All right, as for now, no dates are set for hearings and such. I'll keep watching this case to see if we get a plea deal or if we're going to actually end up with a trial date. As for Trudy's family, they have never stopped fighting. Each year on the anniversary of August 21st, vigils were held in her honor. And just last year, her uncle told reporters that they have a cemetery plot waiting for Trudy. They just need those left alive that know what happened to tell them where they dumped her, and they will find her and give her the respect that she deserves. About a year ago, her uncle reaffirmed the following to Trudy's murderer. "We are coming for you. Your time is up, and we will see you soon." Well, that time might be now with the arrest of Jameson. Let me know what you think of this case, especially if you're in the Quad City area. Everything that I found has led me to believe this case truly has created this mass gridlock among people in the area. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Now, this story out of the Hamptons, I keep waiting for substantial information to come out about the death of 33-year-old Martha Nolan Osletara, but it's just not happening. We are in a wait-and-see mode with her autopsy. But let me give you some details about the case, and maybe you will be intrigued as I am. What is the Montauk Yacht Club? And you guys, it's highbrow. The banner on the yacht club's website reads, "Where barefoot luxury meets waterfront adventure." The club spans 16 acres of waterfront on Lake Montauk, which also has direct access to the Hamptons. You know, the Hamptons, where all the ultra-rich go to play in the summer. The club has several 5-star restaurants, indoor pools, a fitness center, yachts for rent, and yachts that belong to the wealthy docked there. There are guest rooms for those without boats and lots of amenities for kids and families. One portion of the website reads like this: "From waterfront weddings to intimate dinners, creative workshops to team retreats, Montauk Yacht Club's expansive property offers an inspired, diverse range of indoor and outdoor spaces to gather, including the Great Lawn, private dining at Ocean Club Montauk, and the ballroom. Yeah, like I said, highbrow. Well, at about midnight, 13 days ago, Suffolk County Police Department received a 911 call reporting that a woman had fallen unconscious on a yacht that was moored near more than 100 other yachts in the marina at the Montauk Yacht Club. The male caller was explaining that, quote, good Samaritans had tried to provide CPR to the unconscious woman, but they had not had any success. When first responders arrived on scene, they pronounced Martha, that's our 33-year-old, they pronounced her dead at the scene. Right away, crime scene investigators were just stumped. There didn't appear to be a violent struggle. Martha did not appear to have suffered any blows. There were no open wounds. There were no contusions, no bruising. The official ruling now is we got to wait for toxicology. But she did not, quote, show any evidence of violence. Well, Martha was, I would say, right where you would think she would be. Martha was born in 1992 in Carlow, Ireland. She was educated, schooled in commerce at the University College in Dublin, and finishing with a master's degree in digital marketing from UCD Smurfit Business School. In 2015, at the young age of 23, Martha, in a brave and bold move, immigrated from Ireland to New York City. According to her family, she knew she could conquer the fashion world, specifically by targeting the business sectors with her ideas. She put in the time, working as a bottle service waitress in Manhattan before finally breaking into the fashion industry. 7 years after her move from Europe, Martha co-founded East by East with Dylan Grace. The fashion brand was touted as sustainable, and it focused on specialized swimwear, sunglasses, and resort wear. The two ladies even tagged their fashion wares as, quote, built in the city, made for the sun. In 2024, East by East hosted a pop-up shop at the Montauk Resort. These were her people. They had the money to buy sustainable goods at the price point that East by East was marketing. And East by East wasn't her only venture. She also founded the fashion brand Duper and worked on the business end in K4 Capital Management. So, she was working hard in her businesses. But what about her personal life? On her TikTok account, Martha regularly posted videos of her living on Manhattan's Upper East Side. Translation, expensive. And other TikToks show her sipping champagne, taking private jets on trips, riding in helicopters on other excursions. And Martha had just finalized her divorce to Sam Ryan. That happened earlier this year, and she was already in another relationship with 34-year-old sales executive Nicholas DeRubio. It has been reported the two, Nicholas and Martha, were staying in the Montauk area for the summer and that they planned on marrying potentially next year. So, why is she dead on a yacht? Well, the yacht belonged to 60-year-old insurance mogul Christopher Durnan, and it is reported that Martha had spent several minutes, hours before her death, speaking with her boyfriend on the phone, but he was not there. So she meets Christopher alone on the yacht. And then later that night, Christopher runs from the yacht naked, screaming for help, yelling that Martha has passed out. This is where that 911 call happens, and the bystanders scramble aboard the yacht, named Ripple, to try and perform CPR. Some outlets are reporting that when the boat was searched the next morning in the daylight, that some surfaces had a light dusting of white powder. All right, let's talk about Christopher Durnan, our naked guy running from the yacht who owns the yacht called the Ripple, that guy. The tycoon founded Durnan Group in 1981. All right, remember, he is 60 years old, so that makes sense that he founded that company, but it also is a little crazy because he was young when he did so. The Durnan Group makes their millions by specializing in workers' compensation insurance. Christopher, he spends that money. He has several yachts, most of them named after songs by the Grateful Dead, and this checks out because Christopher plays the guitar as a hobby. Christopher is a mainstay in the Hamptons in the summer, and he has a multi-million-dollar home in Long Beach, New York, and another multi-million-dollar home in Florida. He and Martha are connected through that money. Christopher reportedly invested $200,000 in East by East. Remember, that's Martha's high-end beachwear company. Christopher had 2 boats moored at the Montauk Yacht Club. Both have been removed following Martha's death. Christopher is widowed. Not that strange at 60 years old, but his wife Marie died unexpectedly in 2018 at the age of 49. The couple had 2 kids together, a son and a daughter, and I'm not sure what this means, but the tribute page on her obituary site has 0 entries. Do with that what you will. Now, she was described in the obituary as being a loving and dedicated mom, and that she was adored by her 23 nieces and nephews. So, this is the second woman who has died in either his presence or on his property. Again, no accusations here, but I think it's valid information in this crime story. Okay, while the family and the high-dollar world awaits for the results of her toxicology report, Martha's family, who remember is in another country, they're just left to piece together this mystery. After the first autopsy was performed, her family commissioned a second private autopsy to be performed. Martha's mother also has addressed the rumor that Martha had brain cancer. Now, that rumor has been floated on a few different news stories and websites, and Elma, her mother, says they have no knowledge within their family of any claim like that. They called Martha perfectly healthy. The family has also hired a top U.S. lawyer whose clients include Harvey Weinstein and former President Trump White House strategist Steve Bannon. That lawyer told outlets on Friday that many people are still being interviewed by detectives and that the case has multiple layers above and beyond the autopsy results. As for Martha's current boyfriend, he isn't really giving comment. And we've got one last thing here. The Suffolk County East End Drug Task Force is actively involved in the investigation. So many unanswered questions with this one. I'll keep you updated when the autopsy results are released. In the meantime, go ahead, drop your theories below in the comments. And let's finish today with a nonviolent crime. That white-collar crime we never discuss here, but this white-collar affects flight travel, which most of us partake in, so let's dive in. There's this company, Zunum. It's based out of Washington State, just like Boeing, and they wanted to revolutionize air travel by trying to produce the first ever hybrid electric aircraft that could carry up to 50 passengers. The aircraft could fly up to 1,500 miles without refueling or recharging. Now, you guys, I'm not a car girl, but they claimed it would be like producing a Chevy Volt for the skies. Now, it would be super quiet, there would be low emissions and low per mile cost to operate. All of this sounds great, right? Boeing seemed to think so also. They, along with JetBlue Technology Ventures, injected $6 million into the production of the prototype at Zunum. And the government got involved as well and added nearly another $1 million more in grant money. All of this investing went down in 2017. And by late 2018 and early 2019, Zunum was in money troubles. They had failed to find additional investors and they laid off most of their employees. It's about 70 of them. Eventually, in 2019, they suspended their entire operation. They left these employees with unpaid wages, but they were telling everyone they had a wealth of knowledge and that they were still valuable to the travel industry. Well, 1 year later, in 2020, Zunum filed a lawsuit against Boeing. It was all about that knowledge they bragged that they had. Basically, what they were saying is that Boeing got involved in the company to learn about electric air flight, and then Boeing bailed, didn't give any more money, and scalped the knowledge from Zunum. Well, it took 4 years for that lawsuit to be resolved, but in May of 2024, a jury awarded Zunum roughly $72 million for trade secret infringement. Okay, that seems like a lot of money, right? Zunum wanted triple that, so they were possibly a little disappointed in the judgment. Then in late 2024, Judge James Robar overturned that decision, ruling that no money would change hands because he felt that Zunum had failed to properly define its secrets And they also failed to prove their economic value, meaning the judge felt like it was a failed company no matter what. Well, last week, the Ninth Circuit reinstated the $72 million plus a little bit more money. The Ninth Circuit said Boeing now owed Zunum $81 million for the trade secret infringement. And the Ninth Circuit also slapped around Judge James Robar. They didn't like the way it seemed that Judge Robar had been kind of cozy with Boeing, and they felt like that is why he sided with them. See, there's a backstory here. Judge Robar was buying Boeing stock before he ruled that they wouldn't have to pay this hefty judgment. Kind of makes sense, right? The stock would not be valued as high due to the debt they owed, and then if that debt is erased, the stock would probably jump in value, and Judge Robar might have bought it at a much lower price point. Judge Robar said all of it isn't true, that he didn't even know about the stock purchases since it was his wife's retirement financial advisors who purchased that stock, and he wasn't involved in any of it. The appeals court said, nope, you didn't tell us quick enough about the purchase, and that makes you look guilty. Now, some stock trading experts told Business Insider that the, quote, insider information that Judge Robar had access to was probably pretty minor. But the ethics of the judge are also held to a higher standard. All right, if Zunum does end up with the money from Boeing, they are going to have to pay about a third of it in legal fees. Yikes, you guys. This left me wondering, how close are we to electric air travel? Well, Dubai plans to have a short There's Q again. It's funny. It's like she knows we're close to the end of the podcast. Well, Dubai, back to the plane. Dubai plans to have a short distance electric flight on board by 2026. Then another American company is hoping they have electric planes in New York and LA by 2026 as well. Now, singular flights have obviously happened before, since these examples are referencing commercial flights, like a whole scheduled fleet of commercial flights by 2026. So clearly, the knowledge is out there. Now, I fly an airline from Idaho to Arizona pretty regularly to go see my adorable grandsons. I'm not going to tell you which airline it is because I'm not going to out them here, but it is the noisiest air flight I have ever experienced. It is so loud. Electric would be a nice change for me. I don't think it's coming to Idaho anytime soon, though. And now to the comments from Thursday's episode. You guys, I'm so grateful that you felt the same way about Regina, the wife of the cycling accident victim, Chuck. Karina and Jordan and Sue and Penelope and Misty, they all said they were brought to tears by Regina's kindness towards the man who killed her husband. Me too, you guys. And I'm really hoping that you all get your mom hugs that you deserve. Also, we have to remember humanity when it prevails. I'm going to do my best to bring that here. And let's talk about Gabrielle. She shared her vulnerable and heartbreaking experience about her boyfriend's tragic end with using nitrous oxide. If you'll remember last week's episode, I said some people came after me about the first time that I talked about nitrous oxide and the dangerous effects of it. Well, the story with Regina also included nitrous oxide, and Gabrielle is weighing in. First off, from all of us in the Rise in Crime community, we are so sorry for the loss of your boyfriend. Second, Gabrielle, I'll watch to see if Regina is successful in her lawsuit against the manufacturer of that nitrous oxide, and I will let you know. Just a warning, it'll probably take some time before we do know. But in that meantime, we're here for you. All right, that's your Monday episode of Rise and Crime. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your case suggestions. The first one that I covered today was a case suggestion by a loyal Rise and Crime listener. So please keep sending them in. I've had a couple people say, what's the best way? You can leave it in the comments on the YouTube episode, or you can DM on Instagram. That's a great way to get a case suggestion to me also. So either way is perfect. And please share an episode with a friend, one of your favorites, just send it. Touch those 3 little dots and forward it to a friend. That's a great way to help the podcast grow. And of course, just like, follow, subscribe, leave a comment. All of those things help. with all of the Oh No Media podcasts. That's Murder with My Husband, Into the Dark, and Rise in Crime. You can join me again on Thursday for more morning crime news. I'm Mama Jules, and keep safe out there.